Hi, how you doing today? My name is Marvin Jacobs. I'm going to be talking about financial aid in America, I think it's best to just get started. So, just in case anybody doesn't know who I am, oh, Marvin Jacobs. I go to Lehigh University. Um, I'm currently going to be a senior as an undergraduate in the upcoming year. I joined a fraternity, so I have some information about that if you're ever interested. Like I said, Lehigh University, it's in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Also, before I fully get into it, if you have any questions or anything like that, don't be afraid to post in the comment section. And if I'm speaking too fast, also don't be afraid to tell me as well. So yeah, back to this. Like I was saying, I got full financial aid in my school, so thank God for that. But what else? Yeah, I have different friends who have different financial statuses and everything like that. So let's get started into that. I mean, yeah. So types of aid given. Typically, there will be four types of aid. Grants and scholarships, which is typically comes directly from the school, unless you apply to external scholarships. Loans, which is money like that must be repaid back and it has interest and all this other stuff. I'm sure you heard of it. As an international student, loans given by U.S. government won't be available to you because you don't have the necessary forms and like Social Security and all that. So schools might be able to give loans to you, but is typically demonstrated on need and it varies by school. Student employment. So for kids in undergraduate, that involves work study. Like again, like I said, you won't have any federal work study, so you'll have to seek it out from the school, or if they give it to you, it all depends on that. And for graduate students, a little bit different. You have fellowships and assistantships. There's a little bit of difference. I'll go back into that a little later. And like I said, external scholarships, which is outside the school by other organizations and how they give you money and all this stuff. Typically for you guys, it would be most important to fill out the CSS profile, just stands for College Scholarship Service, which is where you'll put in all your financial information and all this other stuff into so schools can see this information. Only accepted around 400 schools, but there are a lot of big schools, so the school recommends. I highly recommend you do it. Also, sometimes I know it's kind of weird, but make sure any external scholarships you give don't contradict any with school and school regulations. So, and I'll go more into that later. I'll just give you a typical thing. So, a few important terms you may not know, or based on the typical schools, look at when you're looking for scholarships and information on financial aid. A few important terms you may need to hear. First, merit-based scholarships. That's given based on your test scores and grade scores. So TOEFL, ACT, SAT, whatever grade you got in school. All those will affect how much can affect how much financial aid you're given, right? Next is need-based awards. Need-based are typically, they look at your financial aid and financial ability, how much you can pay, what's your family income like, and all that stuff. And the school learns that through the CSS forms and all these other forms that we have to turn in. Looking more specifically what happens within financial aid. Grants, it's given typically by the school or federally. All my grants are given by almost all by the school. So, like again, it varies by school, so I would watch out for that. It doesn't need to be paid back. It's not a loan or anything of that sort. It's just money given. Scholarships are also the same thing, but they're more merit. They can be merit or need-based. Grants are typically need-based. Scholarships can be like, hey, you got a scholarship, like a chemistry scholarship, or if you're good at like music, you get a music scholarship to help pay for all that. And it's kind of weird how they're described because they're kind of similar, but not really. One's given more than or one's given more on a different basis than the other. So just watching out for that. Scholarships can be applied for outside the school. Grants are typically given inside the school in America federally. Need blind versus need aware. Need aware means colleges will look at how much you can play when considering your application. Need blind is where colleges ignore financial responsibility and just look at your application, how well you did in school, and all this other stuff. Be careful. Most of the time, it's need aware. Need blind only ever happens like at 5 schools in the entirety of the U.S. So I wouldn't take it to be on the safe side. Take need aware. Need blind only goes for like Harvard, Yale, all these top schools. So unless you're applying for that, I wouldn't recommend relying on that. Scholarships based on major outside organizations, like I was talking about before. Scholarships can come from either the school or outside the school. Outside the school, you need to be a little bit more careful because students can like it'll change how your financial aid package is presented by the school and everything like that. So I highly recommend checking with the school, like, hey, I got this money. Is this okay? Will it affect me? And doing all those necessary steps. Endowments are kind of weird to think about. Endowments are basically money the school has given to it through donations and like used for specific purposes, right? When I say like a school can have like a lot of money and endowments are like comparative, not very much. Endowments can be used as a parameter to judge how much financial aid you'll get. This is because typically 5% of endowments, right, can be used for public spending, whatever, or however you want to say it. Typically, what schools do will use that for financial aid and scholarships. Like I said, 5%. My school personally had an endowment of like 1.1 or 1.2 billion dollars. Because they had such a big endowment, take 5% of that can be used on students. 5% of $1 billion, that's a lot of money that can be used on students. So looking at, and that's per year, right? And schools are constantly getting donations, constantly trying to get endowments and all this other stuff. So looking at that is a good way to say when you're looking at financial aid to take into account. That's how part of the reason I did it. Work study. Work study varies based on what the school decides to give you. There's federal and then there's school work study. As international students, be aware you're not really available. This is mainly for undergraduate. Let me make that clear for this one. As undergraduate student, you're not available for federal work study, like I said before, because you don't fill out the FAFSA, which is federal aid, a federal aid form. Instead, you'll get work study pushed through the school typically if you do get it. And you make a lot of money. Typically, if as an international student, you're only allowed to work a maximum for undergraduate, like I'm saying again, for 20 hours as like a part-time job basis. If you want to work off campus or anything like that, if you have that, I believe the S1, F1 visa, you have to apply after your freshman year. Before your freshman year, you're only allowed to work in the 20-hour part-time. But if you want to do after that, you have to apply through a special program. I think the U.S. State Department, but I'm not entirely sure. For graduate students, you kind of have a little bit of different deal with assistantships and fellowships. Fellowships are basically like they're kind of like grants in a way, but like you're going to a specific program to study and to be partake in a major through research and all this stuff. Assistantship means you're kind of a teacher's assistant. You kind of you like teach maybe 1 or 2 classes per like every week, and it requires a lot more work, but you get funded in a different sort of way. So you're kind of like working at the same time. It's just a different type of work, but it's more time consuming, but both are good. When you're applying to schools, determining whether you want to do early decision or early action, I put a link in the video. It's very important that you take a look at it. Early decisions where you apply early to school, but when you apply for early decision, you're only allowed to apply to one school, and if you get accepted into this one school, you have to take the acceptance letter. You're not allowed to go anywhere else. Early action is a little bit different, where if you apply, you can apply early, but you're not forced to take the acceptance letter from the school. You're not forced to say, okay, I will join. For international students, I would highly recommend not doing early decision, because this is like, again, this is undergraduate, not doing early decision, because you don't know how much money you're going to get from the school. But if you could do early action and you want to know, hey, if I apply to the school, will I get in, and how much money will they give me? And you want to know that early, then you could apply early action. Also, the benefits of early action, and if you take you're placed in, I guess, in a smaller pool of students, right? Like there's not as many students around or applying in early action, so there's typically looked at as better chances of getting financial aid, better chances of being accepted into the school even. And it's kind of controversial, but I kind of would say do it. Like I had a friend who's literally said to me, if I didn't apply early action, I would have gotten into my school, right? And first, it varies on school. Also, with early action is if you don't get accepted, schools may defer you to regular decision, and you still have a chance to get accepted to the school. So like it's a little bit more of a safety, right? But it all depends on you. Early action is you have to turn in by November. So if you're not prepared in time, or if your test scores aren't good enough, or you want to take the another like an SAT or SAT afterwards, or have enough time to study, then I also recommend against early action. That's all based on personal choice. I was going to talk about another thing students don't look at is school finances. When you're trying to plan for how much you're going to pay for school, there's a lot of other fees students don't look at. So one thing, prices rises, prices for tuition rise around 3 to 4% per year, and that's like average across all U.S. Schools, both graduate and undergraduate. So my fee this year, right, as you can see on my cost of attendance, was $73,175. Last year it was $69,690. If you're not getting full financial aid, you have to be aware, okay, I'm gonna have to pay for this, even if I do get into school, right? If I do get financial aid, I'm gonna have to pay for, but it's not full. I'm gonna have to pay for this increased price every year. International students, like I was talking about before, are generally on a need-aware basis. This means how much you're able to pay will be taken into admission, right? And I know that sounds unfair, but because of how the business of being in a university works, they're gonna look into that. So there's other ways you can, I guess you could like avoid that, and we'll talk about it more later, but just be aware that's how the system works in America. If forms or deadlines are filled out late, like say you're like trying to fill out the CSS profile, college scholarship service, and you accidentally like you have it filled out, but you haven't turned it to the school, or like the school has a specific portal that they use on their website. Call the school and be like, hey, if I may not have this, I didn't have enough time, or the form wasn't filled out correctly. Can I still turn it in? And like within reason, right? Like if you're a month late, then don't expect too much. But like if you're like a day or a couple hours late, typically schools are more accepting. Like this is only to be in emergencies, right? Also, I wanted to look at when you look at the cost of attendance, right? Typically, when you're looking at how much you're going to be able to pay for school and all this other stuff, there's a lot of fees students aren't aware of. Typically, when they're applying, as you can see, what you typically see on a school website, tuition and room and board, right? Like, or like anything other stuff. You don't see the technology fee, which I go to my school, I'm not even sure what that is. You don't see activity fee, I still don't know what that is. Like books and supplies, I pay for my own books. So like, there's a bunch of weird things you're going to have to take into account. And like, depending on your financial aid package, which is how, when I say financial aid package, it's how the school disperses your financial aid. And it's like the name of it, how it's given, and everything like that. So when students typically don't understand, there's a bunch of other things, and I'll go more into this later. How much support will you get from your family? If you're not getting a full financial aid package, right, and a lot of the money that's going to be helping you and going through it will come from your family. So looking at that and making sure, oh, my family has like this amount of money that can set for me for the semester, for the year, and figuring all that out is important when you're trying to decide where you're trying to go for financial aid and how much they can help you. Another thing I want to talk about is programs affect how scholarships can be adjusted, right? So if you're a resident assistant, which is like if you're in a dorm and you have to take care of the dorm, and typically when you become a resident assistant, you don't have to pay for room and board, which is you think is great, but because it changes how the school views your tuition and how they will distribute money to you. So, or like even work study and outside scholarships. Like if you get more outside scholarships, then the school may not give you as much financial aid package, because you're not getting that financial aid package, and maybe like maybe you won't be able to afford a certain thing a certain way or anything like that. So it's very complicated, and I recommend sitting down and checking out that. I say this because I've seen examples of this. I had a friend who was an RA, but she also had work study. Because she was RA, she didn't have to pay for room and board, and she was like, "Oh, this is great." But because the school was like, "Oh, because you're an RA, your fees will be less," then her work study was taken away. And work study is more a disposable fund, right? Like you can use that more as however you work. It's kind of it's like a part-time job. It's your own money. You can use it to pay for books and however. Because that was the takeaway, she was put into a management where she was like struggling to finance all her stuff. So it's important to look at and just immediately check beforehand how all these programs and scholarships and all that you're trying to get affect your financial aid package as a whole. There's also going into that, outside of the tuition, right? So like on here, like you can see the cost of attendance. Outside of that, you also have other options you have to look at. Housing options, and I talked about this in another video, but housing options. Are you going to be living on campus or off campus? Typically cheaper to live off campus. On my school, it costs like $4,000 per semester, right? To live in an on-campus house, which is a dorm. If since I'm going to be living off campus, I only pay $600 a month. That's like for 5 months. That's like wow, I'm tripping. $600 a month for 5 months. That's like $3,000, and two of that is like if you do for 10 months, that's like $6,000 versus $8,000. So I'm saving money automatically, right? I think they still charge us more, which is weird. but like things like that where you can save money. Like this is talking about more when you get in. This applies to both graduate and undergraduate students. So like you can save money if you learn how the school's fund system works. For food, the school typically will have meal plans once you're in college, right? Like, and this goes for, like I said, this goes for both. All of these go for both graduate and undergraduate students. So like I'll take people can listen to both of them. Schools have meal plans where it's like, and typically like, oh, you pay $3,000 per semester, and you get the school meal plan. You get a certain amount of like they call it swipes. So like you get like a semi debit card, and you swipe, and it takes like one meal off the card, right? And that can cost like $3,000, and it's like, or how much? Maybe even sometimes more. And you may be like, oh, but wait a minute, if I take off a meal plan, it's way cheaper, and typically it is. So like, and that would come instead of that being in tuition. All you do is focus on that. Some schools, like my school, where since I'm on full, or like depending on how much tuition aid package you get, the school gives you back the money, and like it's weird. It's like they call it a reimbursement check, where the school will give you back the money that they're not giving, since you're on a certain financial aid, they're not going to take it away. So they'll give you the money in cash, and you can use that to pay for your groceries. It's a weird thing, and you learn more about it as you do it, but stuff to look out for. Travel. Most people, when they live, if you're like a graduate student especially, if you're living on campus or you choose to live off campus, and you're living far, you're going to need some form of transportation. Public transportation is an option, but depending on where you are, it can be very cheap or very expensive. And sometimes school will offer like buses around campus, but typically not far, like they offer to the mall. But if you have other stuff you need to do, it's important. If you're not if you don't have any money for flights and going to and from the U.S. is very expensive. You don't have a place to stay over summer, or even for breaks and stuff like that. And figuring out all those costs, like even outside the tuition, is very expensive. Sometimes the school will give you more funding depending on how your package works for like flights and all this other stuff, but I wouldn't guarantee that. As international students, you also have to pay for school's health insurance program. That's completely separate. That's like $2,000 right there. So you have to like budget for that. Like if you don't unless you have a health insurance plan that's like accepted by the school currently, you will still have to pay. Personal budget expenses. Students like to do stuff outside of the classes, right? You're gonna have to finance that. Figure out, oh, even though I have this package, I may not have money for anything else. Maybe you'll be forced to live on campus and forced to do all this other stuff, maybe because of how the things works. Books, like going back, it says books and supplies are part of my packet, like cost of attendance. I don't know how that's possible. I still pay for books, so you'll still pay for books and classes and everything like that, and that can go to like $500 per semester. So you're paying for a lot of money. And like I say here, look for options that don't require you to buy. I haven't paid for a book like in college since freshman year, unless the school is the only one who sold it. Mainly because there's other options if possible. Like you could rent books, you can buy from typically like on our school Facebook page. There's cheaper people who sell the book for cheaper, and just so the price and what you're paying for the school and all this other stuff isn't as high. And that's something to take all these things people don't take into account when applying for college. How much they can actually manage. Like you may be, even if you're getting full tuition aid, you may still struggle to make it through because you have all these costs outside that you don't really know how to manage. So the best way to get noticed for financial aid, because we talked about the different types of aids, where you can how to make it work and everything like that. Honestly, for international students, TOEFL, the better TOEFL score you have, the better school you can get into, the more likely we're winning money. SAT, ACT scores and grades, and for grad students, GRE, GMAT, the LSAT, all these stuff, the better your scores are, the more financial aid you're going to get. And that's just how the system works. You can do other stuff. Extracurricular activities are also really good. Extracurricular activities are really good. If you have leadership roles, you're in clubs or anything like that, schools look well for that. I talked about it in my last video. Being able to broadcast yourself, so show that you're more than just a student, that you have things to offer to the school. Schools it's becoming more and more important because schools, when everybody's competitive, like I said before, when everybody's competitive grade-wise, what separates you from students and what makes them want to invest in you. Financial aids are, think of it as an investment into the student and what can the school find to get back from the student. Essays and writing skills. And this kind of goes into TOEFL as well, but for me personally, I would say my essays were part of the reason I got into my school, right? I was able to write really well, probably better than my peers. This is probably where I shine as a student. I was very concise. I knew like I was able to like I guess a sap story like I was able to make them empathetic with me and stuff like that. I was able to put I put a lot of effort into it. It was really good. Like so like I think I'll put this in here later. I don't know, but like there's typically for the Common App or even for even like if you need to make a motivational letter for graduate school, showing that you have an ability to express yourself on paper, which some people might not have. Like I know a lot of I have a lot of engineering friends. They don't really know how to write. They're like, "Oh, Marvin, can you look over my reading?" And I'm like, "Sure," or writing. I'm like, "Sure, Hillary, let me help." All this other stuff. Showing that you have these skills that can translate to elsewhere, very important. And the question I always like to ask is like, what can you offer to the school? It kind of goes into the marketing yourself thing, right? Like schools, like I said, they're investing in you. What can they get out of their investment, right? Like if you want them to give you money, what are you going to give them? And asking yourself this, being honest with yourself, saying this is what I have to show for myself, and all this other stuff. It will definitely get you noticed more. So a little things about how I got financial aid, right? Like I applied to many schools that were like I wasn't the best in, right? I'm decent, but like I'm not the best. So I applied to academically in my reach academically wise, my bad. So I was realistic, right? I was like schools like Lehigh is known to give Lehigh is known to give a lot of aid. It's kind of a stretch for me, but like because I did a lot of extracurriculars, like I was like in 3 different leadership positions in my school, in varsity sports. I had all this other stuff. The school was able to look at me as a better student, and I was like, okay, we'll look at he has a lot of attributes that we like and all this other stuff. So I applied to my reach academic wise. I applied to a lot of schools. So a lot of big variety of schools. To me, for me personally, it wasn't important about where I went. It was like how much financial aid I get. Like I know, and I don't always recommend that because like if you're a graduate student, applying for a program that's specific to you will definitely get you more financial aid than applying to a wide variety. So it's a little bit different for me because I didn't know what I wanted to do first when I was going in and all this other stuff. And just like I was like, here, let me see. I applied from California to the East Coast, to the West Coast, to the North, to the South, everywhere, right? And I was going to go wherever it took me. So like applying to a wide variety, turning all my phones as soon as possible. I know I said if you turn yourself late to make sure to talk with school, but honestly, it's best just be ahead of the curve. Just make sure like everything's in. That way, if you turn everything in, but there's a problem, you can at least like the school will at least be able to inform you, and you can do like as much fixing and adjusting as you need be. Right. I start in America. Like I said, it's typical for more students to start they're like almost 2 years above like before you actually are applying. I started my junior year. I think I said one, but I started my junior year. I was already looking at different colleges. I was looking at different maybe outside scholarships that would help me. I was always looking at like endowments and like what school gets my financial aid. And I was doing all my research ahead of time. Maybe you won't start as early as your junior year, but just taking the time and being ahead of curve, starting early, like looking where I want to go and all this other stuff will make searching for financial aid and scholarships and grants and all this other stuff easier on you because you're not as rushed for time as previously. Honestly, I'll say one of the biggest things was my college advisor set realistic expectations for me, and I recommend you guys do the same for yourself. If your grades are not the best, or like maybe like grades aren't the best, or you're applying to a school that's not known to give financial aid, because some schools will straight up say we don't give financial aid to international students. So set real expectations. Like you can't think like you have to think you're special, but like recognize the schools is like I only for a lot of times for international students they only see the money. So like it's a harsh world. So applying to where you can do, like I said, applying to my reach academically wise, applying to where you think it will be best for you, where you think you're going to get accepted, you think maybe offer you the most financial aid. Don't apply to like Harvard or Yale just because they're brand name schools, I guess. Apply to stuff that may not be as well known, but still will be able to supply you with money and all this other stuff. Like I said before, my essays, like some schools say don't offer supplemental or optional essays, but if they do, I recommend taking the time to sit down, write them, make sure they're really thought out because it shows you took time out of your day first to do it. And second of all, to give them the school another avenue to see you as a student and to see like, oh, we like this more and more and more, and maybe we should invest in this. And like I always said, this is for me personally, I focus more on grades and test scores before I did financial aid. And I know it sounds weird, right? But honestly, putting your best effort in on your grades, like focusing in on like grades and test scores, make sure that are high as possible. That's going to get you more financial aid than just worrying about financial aid. Because there's sometimes it feels like there's not a lot you can actually do to get aid, and that can be true. So what's the best way to get aid as a student? Just show that you're the best student possible. If you don't have extracurriculars, and like it's not the end of the world, like, but if you can show that you're the best student possible, it may help you a lot more. You can get merit-based scholarships and stuff like that, right? Or if you're able to show, like, I don't know, there's just grades and test scores will always be important when it comes to getting financial aid, and you can't delude yourself into thinking they won't be. So some of the tips I would apply for this, tips on applying, right? Start applications early to determine where you want to go and what forms you need to fill out. It's a lot of times people don't understand, like, oh, I kind of want to do this, I kind of want to do that. Like, even for grad students, I kind of want to go here, but you need to figure that out. Like, that's part of the first thing, right? You need to figure out where you're going to go, how much financial aid do they typically give students, all this other stuff. What forms do you fill out? I know I mentioned international students don't get FAFSA, which is like federal aid, but some schools actually still have to fill out the FAFSA, right? And you may say, oh, this is weird. They're still going to deny me. The reason they do is so they can see how much money your family makes and all this other stuff, how many they should give you. It's not like they accept the FAFSA, but it keeps on record the financial status of you and like financial availability and everything. The CSS form also does the same. It's very extensive. All very important. Like, so figure out what forms you need to fill out. Ask the school, like, hey, I know I'm an international, but do I still need to fill out this, this, and this? It's all very important. Stay in constant contact with the school. When I was applying, right, for the school for Lehigh, I was calling every week, like, what do I need to fill out? Do I turn everything in? Like, what else do you need from me? Did I turn it in correctly? Is the form filled out and everything? Like even like an hour after I've sent it, right? Like, just pestering them to make sure like everything is correct, because you don't want to turn in information and it's wrong. Most of your scholarship money will come from the school as an international student, but it doesn't hurt to check outside the institution. Also, a lot of it'll be based on like I said, it's on a year basis. So what your family can pay, that will also be taken into consideration. So looking into that becomes very important. Turn all your forms. I kind of said this before, but turn your forms in on time. Check deadlines. Call to see if your school is informed. I know it seems like I'm like talking a lot about that. That's honestly like half the battle. Okay, that's honestly half the battle. This one is kind of sounds weird, but wait till you get all your acceptance letters and analyze your reward packages together. A lot of students, when they get their reward packages, they're excited. They're like, oh my God, I got in, right? And then they're like, oh, I got some money, so that's also kind of cool. I can still be able to go to my school. But they don't, and then they would ignore anything else, right? I highly recommend against that. What you should do is wait till you see how many acceptance letters you get, how much money they're going to be offering, and it varies because some schools, like I know Oregon State University or Oregon University, whatever, they won't tell you how much money you get until you accept their acceptance letter, which is really weird, right? So like, I would make sure you say what you got accepted, how much money, because sometimes schools give loan, right? So like, how much loan do you want to have to pay off after, right? So if you got one scholarship or one financial aid that had a lot more loan than another one, but like one of the schools you want to go to more, you have to think of your financial availability. You may want to go to this school more, but because they're having more loans and you may not be able to pay that off in time, you have to say, oh, I have to go to a second choice or something like that. I know that sounds unfair, but this all has to be taken into consideration. Be aware of different programs school offer when applying. So you may apply to a school and it could be like, oh, we may not accept you for this, but if you do this and this and this, and I would kind of stick away from this because like I had a friend who applied to Northeastern universities in Boston and Massachusetts. He applied. They're like, we're not going to accept you now, but if you go take a year to study in Australia, we'll accept you later, right? And he's like, okay, I'll do that, right? If you're trying to get accepted and you're not worried, typically those programs aren't funded, so be aware of that. But if you're trying to really get into school and it's like that's what you really want, be aware some schools do that. Be as transparent as possible when giving the information on things like the CAS, the FAFSA, if the school requires it, and go over the forms all yourself. Like because I have personal examples of this. I had a friend, he was applying for schools, right? And his mom ended up not filling out I think it was the CSS form, right? Profile, financial aid profile. She didn't fill it out all the way. So what happened is he didn't get all the financial aid he needed. He needed more, but because of his mother wasn't as informed about how to fill it out, he didn't go over himself. He just trusted like his family. He wasn't able to get into the school he wanted because the financial aid package was lower than he expected, and that's tragic. Like, I highly recommend going over yourself. When I was going over my turning in my financial aid and all this stuff, I had my mom tell me like her tax returns. I had her tell me how much money she made every year. I had her tell me all this information about like stuff that typically as a kid or like even as a student you wouldn't pay attention to, and especially because I know internationally like it's cheaper, but in America it's very expensive. So like checking every single little piece of the information you give, right? It's very important to make sure you get the most maximized amount for financial aid and like scholarships and grants, because schools really do take that into account. And you don't want to lie on them either, because they'll figure that out. Like, don't do it, like, obviously. But yeah, I highly recommend you like control every step of the process that you can in order to ensure that you have the best chances of getting financial aid in different ways. So some of the best places to find information, honestly, generally, the school websites, frequently asked questions have the best sources. Like you not think like, oh, it wouldn't, like, it doesn't apply to me or stuff like that. For general questions, yeah, they kind of apply to everybody, and they have a specific section typically for international students. So if you're worried, like, do they actually give international students aid? Sorry, excuse me. If you're worried they actually give international students aid, or like how much can I be expected, or like what type of deal do you do? How much endowments do they have, and all this other stuff. Just go onto their frequently asked question or just search the website. You'll find a lot more information than you expect. Mentions the financial aid office or international student office, for both, honestly, or both, honestly. Like, if you're trying to figure out like, hey, how much can I possibly get? Like, what do they typically give students around like this, all this other stuff, and like it's not on the frequently asked questions. You check that. It varies. Sometimes school, like their offices, will just recommend you back to the frequently asked question portion, but it doesn't hurt to ask, right? Like, or typically, I rather, instead of like, it's gonna be hard for you because of time difference, but like I typically would just call the school and be like, hey, what's happening? Can you tell me like how's it going? Like, what's my package doing and everything like that. Just general questions can be asked. If possible, if you know anybody who's been like, or through the opportunity who's been accepted in school, like ask what their process was like, all this other stuff. If possible, like through social media, Facebook, and all this other stuff, don't be afraid to ask others. Website databases also have a lot of information. College Board, it has shows you what it gives you information about the CSS profile, SATs, practice tests. I don't know if it does the ACTs, but you can see like a starter page right there. Peterson.com also shows like different ways to get scholarships and funding and all this other stuff. So check those websites out. Make sure they're accredited and that they're actual like valid websites if you're going searching. Here's just like an example. Like, this is from, well, one of these is from my school, right? It's like, do you offer aid for international students? Yes. Offer a limited amount of funds for eligible first-year international students. So you can like read through that if you want, but like just stuff like questions that you may think you have questions for, they often are directly on here, right? If you look on the right, you won't fill out the FAFSA. Like, you might have to, depending on your school, if what they ask, but like how to apply for aid, types of aid, student employment, financial aid, cost of tuition and fees, net price calculators. I know I didn't talk about this, but I recommend people check that out. That's gonna be, I can like show you like, oh, this is how much all the other fees are together and all this other stuff, and how much you'll possibly get for financial aid. And check that out. It's important. Just like go through the school websites, tinker with it. I did, like, I would spend hours at a time just going through different schools I was interested in, like searching up their website, like trying to figure out how much money I could get, all this other stuff. So important to check that out. Also, there's a source, if you're looking from the Education USA Guidebook, go to the Education USA website. These are different pages you can go to. On the right's graduate, on the left there's general funding and resources. It's typically for undergraduate. Talks about loans and all this other stuff. Like I said, go on the website, has much more information. Different, like, maybe you're curious about different majors, or like you need to contact somebody you're not sure out. Just check out the website. Lastly, beware of fake scholarships outside the school. And this is kind of where I was talking about, like, make sure the school agrees or accredits the scholarship you're giving. If you're asked for money up front or application fee, probably not a valid source. They'll just take the money and leave, or it may say you're in any loan fees. If you're asked to pay for a loan first, and then when I add it back, make sure you're not paying, like I says, never be a payment before the money can be used. Guarantee scholarship. Any good places that guarantee you a scholarship, they're not being truthful to you, they're lying to you. It may just be asking for take your money. Like, you understand what the point is, right? Like, make sure everything you're applying for is accredited, all this other stuff, so that when you're applying for scholarships, they're actually going to be able to use. You're not getting, I guess, like cheated. That everything you're applying for is guaranteed. Your identity's not going to be stolen, because it can happen, right? Like, things can happen. You don't want them to happen to you. I'm going to be real quick about this. Like, it's very not obvious, but like, I'll just be careful about what you're applying to and make sure guarantee everything's accredited and official. That's all I have. Do you have any more questions? Now's the time to ask them. You can ask them in the Q&A, and I'll be here for a good 5 or 6 minutes. Like I said, if you need to book me for a personal consultation, Reverend Jacobs Assembly Book It is available. Individual meetings will be held on the Belarus.EAC on Skype. And if you also want to email me, I'm also available for there. So this is time for asking any questions. Don't be shy. Like, I'll ask anything. I don't have an answer to it. I'll try my best. But yeah, if you have any questions, shoot. That's the end of it. But yeah. And until we have any questions, I'll talk a bit more. Or until I see any questions, I'll talk a little bit more as well. Because a lot of things I would like to talk about that maybe I didn't mention here. So school finances, like when you see all these fees, right? Activity fee, books and supplies, miscellaneous, room and board, technology fee, tuition fee. I know it is shown on here, but like if you're a freshman coming into undergraduate, there's an orientation fee. So like you're paying to do orientation for a school that requires you orientation. And like for my school, that was like $400. So like there's a lot of fees and like stuff you don't expect when you're applying for school. So I would say like keep an extra like couple, like if you're accepted, right? Always be aware like, what does the school ask me to pay for? Like, I don't know if you can fight it technically, but like be like, do I really have to pay for this? Or like, is there any way I can get around this? Like, you just kind of have to, I almost say, stingy with your money a little bit, because man, colleges, when I say colleges are business, and they will find ways to get to you, right? Like, it's not on here, but if a person has a car at my school, they have to pay $200 a semester, additional $200 a semester, just to live on the campus, or like just to park the car on the campus. And they still have to pay parking tolls. So like, there's a bunch of other stuff that like you don't really think of when you're like trying to apply for colleges. And once you get in, like, oh, what do I have to pay for and all this other stuff, right? What else do I like? Unexpected costs. Sorry. What I don't even like. I can't even think of. There's a bunch, honestly. Like, if you're depending on what housing you're living in, right? Like, depending on the dorm you choose to live in, the tuition, room and board will change. So, like, right now it says on the cost of attendance. Okay, sorry. One question: are there a lot of international students in your university who work on campus? Actually, surprisingly, there are. What is it? There's about, from my school, there's about 1,000, I think, international students. So we typically like, and like in my own I have work study, right? So I have like, there's a bunch of people. I can like, here, I wonder if I could I don't think I can bring up the picture, but like international like clubs, there's international people, international do work study. So like I work in the university center where we do like information desk. So like the student has a question about like where do you go for this and this, where the person to go to. There's a person in my person from Spain in my own work study. There's a person from China. There's like a few people from India. There's people from Mexico. They're all over. So like it's not that hard to find work study. Like my school even has a work study fair where you go around and just find different jobs that you could do. So like it's not like, if it's part of your package, it's not really hard to like find anything. And like they kind of offer it to a lot of people, but that's personally my school. So like I'm kind of used to being around that. Like almost work study is not even based about like what you get is just like what you apply for. So it's honestly like not as hard as you expect. yeah, a lot of people work on campus. And like I said, since like 1,000, I think we have 1,000 international students. So like they're around everywhere. Like there's different international clubs and all this other stuff. So like it's definitely available. I hope that answers your question. I think that does. If you need me to go more in depth, just ask me. Uh, cause yeah, cause yeah, because there's also can you get when working on campus? Like I said, it's for when you're coming from as an international student, because based on how the thing works, if you're coming as a freshman or yeah, if you're coming as a freshman to undergraduate, you work part time, and it varies how much you can get based on your financial aid package. But after your freshman year, you're allowed to apply to work off campus, so you can possibly get more money then if you choose to go off campus. But it also depends on how many hours you work, because when you're applying, because like depends on like what job you're working at. Like at my job, right? Like the minimum wage, we get paid minimum wage, or like around amount minimum wage was like $9.25. I get like a little bit of raise increase every year. So like if I work the maximum 20 hours, I can get paid like if I work 20 hours per week, I can get paid around like $350 to $400 like every 2 weeks. That's how mine's work, right? I don't know how everybody else's work, but somebody else at another work study on campus got paid $15 per hour, right, or for minimum wage, and they get paid way more than I do. So like, but I like my job, so like I don't need the way my financial package work out. And this is also a little bit of a caveat, right? So like you might get money from the financial aid and it's like set up, but like I'm only allowed to get, and this I'm not going to say this to everybody, but it's just my example, and this is what I have. Um, I'm only allowed to get up to $1,100 or $1,100 every semester, but but surprisingly, you can for a lot of people you can choose the hours you want to work or whatever because it's flexible because there's so many students around the campus. So like if I only choose to work 10 hours of a week, I won't be able to fill out my financial aid like how much they're going to pay me. So a lot of it varies on like personal. I know someone who literally worked 20 hours every week and was able to get a lot more money. And because our boss is nice, which is thank God, she allows us to work like I can't work more than 20 hours per week, but I can work past my financial aid package just to still pay me. So the money kind of works in various ways, but so it's a hard question to say at like how much money I can get, but I know I can get a decent amount. I get paid personally every 2 weeks, maybe different for some people. Um, Also, there's like on-campus jobs, right? So if you work, I was able to do my work study, but for international students, it cost me a little bit different. But I was able to do my work study, and then I also applied for an on-campus job at the local Starbucks. Still separate from the school, I was able to do both, and also other stuff. So I was able to make more money that way. You're welcome. What else is there? What else is there when I think about schools? Um, Resident assistant, you don't have to pay for room and board, right? But like I said, be wary. You might have to like the cost might change or something like that. So like you won't have to pay for room and board, and your tuition is like lower, but your financial aid in some other way or form can be taken away. What else is there? Sorry, 1 second. Back to important terms. Um, Grants are probably like if you're grants is probably what you want. Typically, as international students, you won't really get loans. Um, so I didn't put it in here in important terms. It's often very much where you're going to be either given a grant or like scholarships or like they'll like ask you to pay. Like I said, check with endowments. If there any more questions, let me know or anything else. Uh, for me personally, I didn't take on any outside scholarships or anything like that because I was too worried how it would affect how much money the school gave me. Um, and also, I recommend if you do get financial aid, right, and you do get outside scholarships, I would call the financial aid office and say, how much money can I get? How much money if I get this money? How much from the outside the school will it be okay? Checking with the school to make sure that's fine and everything's highly recommended. Early action, like I said, if you feel you're strong enough as a student as is, your test scores and all that stuff are good. I might recommend early action if you're trying to see like put yourself in a pool of less students. What else is there? Types of aid. CSS profile is very important. Like I said, to make sure external scholarship, student employment. Like I said, for fellowships and assistantships, be aware with assistantships. This is speaking to graduate students. Actually, no. Undergraduate students can also work for teachers. It's a form of work study as well. Like I have a friend who does work study at both my job, and he also works for another teacher and do work study there. It's a form of way to get research and all this other stuff. So there's different experiences in how that can work out. You just have to ask around campus. He's known as teacher for like 1 or 2 years, so like he's under the guise of like work study. He's doing research with the teacher to get like better to get like more experience in his job, like for his job experience. So things like that can be very helpful. And going back to fellowships and assistantships. Assistantships can be kind of a troubling challenge because like I said, you're typically like in charge of a class. You may have to grade people's homeworks or like grade like a testing or like be there for testing. You may have like a bunch of more work on top of your already like studying for yourself. So like it's great to get them. I'm not gonna like turn anybody away from them, but just be wary of like what you also have to do, like all this other stuff. And I wouldn't say they're bad. I just say like it's probably a little bit more work than you typically expect. Fellowships are more of like typically designed like you're doing research for a specific program at a specific college and all that other stuff. So like you're doing work, but it's a little bit of a different way of financing it. Talking about how I got noticed for financial aid. So a little bit of like I'm Black, obviously, so like there's a little bit of like diversity factor coming in, right? So like using that to your advantage and talking about your unique experiences. Like everybody, as an international student, you're not the typical white schools see, like white student schools see. So like you have a different background. Use that to your advantage, right? Like if you're gonna be talking about yourself in like an essay or why you want to go to America to study, bring that up that you're international, you have a different experiences, you're doing different things. The environment you've been raised in is completely different from what American schools like to see. Use that to talk about in your essays and stuff like that. Like, why are you different from other students? That's what I did, right? Like, I have a Black experience in America. That's not typically what you see in my school. Like, my school has like 4% Black students. So being able to bring that up and like why I'm unique as a person and what can I bring to the school and like what's different about me, very helpful when in writing like essays and trying to figure out what you can give to the school and what makes you unique. Especially since you're international, like you have an entirely different experience. Use that to your advantage. I want to say always do optional essays. That's personal advice because, like I said, school gets you to see you a different way. It works in tandem with you being an international student. What else? It's never too late to get your grades and test scores up. Like people, like some of the schools, right, have rolling admissions, so they're constantly taking new schools, especially if it's like a U.S. state school. I know there's like maybe a negative view, but like they're perfectly fine to be honest. But if there has a rolling admissions or like you have like enough time to like take the test again to get a better score. Like put it this way, in America, nobody ever takes the SAT or ACT once, right? I had a friend who took the ACT 3 different times. Once as a preliminary to see how we do, another time as a after he studied more, and one more time as a final time to see if he could do any better, right? So I know it's harder as international students because like the testing days are different and everything like that. But if you can, if possible, try to take multiple times if possible to do the test. Like if never too late to improve your grades, right? Like strangely enough, I didn't take myself seriously until my junior year. Like for freshman year, I was like doing pretty well because it's freshman year and in high school it's like it's a breeze. Sophomore year, I started struggling and I was just out of my mind. Junior year, I was like, okay, I need to do better grades. And my advisor was like, you need to get like at least a 3.5 if you want to do any better, right? So I struggled for the entire junior year. I was able to bring my grade up to a decent like point average. I wasn't like terrible. It was like a 3.5 or whatever. And then so when I got to my senior year, I already had like it seems like not a lot of time, but I had put in enough effort. Even for my first semester of my senior year in high school, I had gotten a better GPA. So what I used is I said I showed improvement in my GPA and all this other stuff in order to say like, here, look at me. Like I may have done bad at the beginning. As a student, I've grown. In college, I'll grow more. And that's like, it's ways you can flip like what you're doing stuff, and you just have to think about like, it sounds like I don't know what's the word. It sounds like BS a little bit, but like you're just using everything you have to your advantage to say like, this is how I'm improving. Like I said, this is how I'm improving, or this is how I'm doing stuff amazing, or this is why I'm such a good person, and all this other stuff. Throw that into your papers and all this other stuff, and it allows people to notice you. Like my college advisor was like, actually, it's almost a good thing that you started low and ended up high, because it shows that as a person you're willing to improve. Colleges like to see improvement; they don't like to see a stale person or anything like that. So I was like, oh, cool. Like it's just a weird thing, right? Like you don't. There's a lot of factors taken into when you're applying to a college and trying to get financial aid that you don't see as a person applying, but like because people around you kind of know better, especially if you're in this environment where you're talking to like I know it's hard if you don't have a college advisor, but like if you're talking to someone who's been through the process and all this other stuff, they'll show you stuff that you may not be able to see about yourself, and it's important to look at that. Who else? Sorry. Tips on applying. Sorry for those. When you get your acceptance letters, and it sounds bad, but taper your happiness. Like, I don't want you to like, oh, I got in, but I don't honestly like. I want you to think like, I got in. What's next? Like, it's like the process almost feels like it's never gonna stop. I wouldn't be like, I wasn't like, I didn't believe I was getting financial aid until I was in a school and I realized I had to pay for some things. And that, like, it sounds crazy, right? Like, you're like, oh, you already know you got the package, you already know you got this, but you need to be like you need to be on par with everything. Like, you need to be there for everything to make sure everything's on task, everything's gonna, like, even when I got in, I was like, all right, this might just be me being like negative in a sense, or like cynical in a sense, but it's just like I was like, until I get into the school, until I'm taking the classes, until I brought on my books, I don't know how much money I actually need, right? I don't know how much like this aid is actually going to help me, and like all this other stuff, because it's hard to tell how much money is actually necessary. So you need, like, it sounds cynical, but like even when I say wait till you get your acceptance letters, it sounds like, oh, but you got in, and what's the point? You got like, even when I got full, I was like, oh, I got full, but I had to pay for all this other stuff. Like, you need to think about all that. And it's hard in the moment. It's hard when you're super excited and all this other stuff. Like sitting down and being like, okay, what's next? What's the next step? And like even when you're in college, even once I'm in school, right? Once you're in the school, even as a junior, even as a becoming a senior, I still have to turn in my forms every year, right? I still have to turn in like how much money my mom makes. I think I do. I'm pretty sure I do every year. I still turn in my showing the school I deserve the financial aid package. So it never stops really. Like, and then I never stop thinking about how I can make more money, how I can save the money I'm spending at school, a lot of stuff. So like, especially once you get in, you'll start seeing it more and more, like people complaining or people trying to figure out how to save money. So it kind of never stops. So I always say, like, think about your finances. Yeah, that's something I can say. These are kind of self-explanatory. Yeah, and definitely check out the Education USA Guidebook, because it will help you as an international student. But like, because I don't have all the sources, right? But if you look up maybe these or more, it'll be definitely helpful to you. Okay, that's all I can think of saying. So, like I said, if you have any questions about financial aid, this is the last chance to speak. I'm about to head off soon. If you want to contact me, make a booking or just email me if that doesn't happen. Like I said, that's all I have to say today. Thank you very much for dropping in. I hope you have a good day, and goodbye.